live here. It's been a little disrupted here over the last several weeks, and so I want to thank you for sticking with me and through some of this stuff. Let me just do my best to lower whatever expectations you have for today's lesson. Just whatever your normal expectation is, just ratchet that down about 3 notches. I had told myself, just record the lesson. And I said, no, you got to get back into doing this. And that's just the way it has to be. And so I said, okay, well, I went ahead and I wrote, and I put that in air quotes right now, I wrote the lesson on Monday of this week, and I said, all right, I'll come back and I'll look it over on Saturday. And so yesterday, I pull out the lesson that I had allegedly wrote on Monday to find that I had 1 page. Now, that doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but typically whenever I write a lesson, it's anywhere from about 4 to 6 pages in preparation that I do. I had 1 page and like 1 line on the next page. And I was like, oh, I am so not ready for tomorrow. So we got some good stuff. This may not be the longest lesson that you have, and who knows? We'll see how this plays out. But let's go ahead and let's jump into it. Let's go through core values. Let's start off. Jesus' core value was that he always valued people. And at the church, we have 8 core values. What are our core values here at Cochrane Community Church? Outreach. What else? Prayer. Relevancy. Look at relevancy. You guys are good. You do it like this was way out of order for me today. I was like, whoa. We got to number 8, and I was like, what is the one that's missing? And then as a group, we have a couple of core values, and we have the core values of timeliness and growth. All right, so that's where we're going to start out this morning. Just from a logistics standpoint, this is week 19 of 21 in this particular study. So we've got 2 more weeks of this study, and then we get to move on to something else. So I welcome suggestions, recommendations, areas of interest that you may have for what we study next. I have a couple ideas myself. I'll potentially share. Well, I'll share one with you now. One of the ideas that I'm toying with is to look at. We're studying leadership now. I'm thinking we may go and we may study teamwork, which is going to be a study of the book of Nehemiah. So I'm throwing that out there as a maybe. I don't know that that's my first choice, but that is a choice that we have out there. But if there's anything else that you would like to study, by all means, feel free to throw that out. The next thing that I know that will disrupt us gathering here is Camp for Kids, because there's going to be a Sunday when we're meeting out at Playland, so we will not be having class that day. We'll be putting up tents or something. I mean, there'll be all sorts of excitement. Now, that said, I guess I don't even know enough about that. I don't know if there's a rain out or anything like that. But my plan is for the week that we are out there, we will not be having class. So just so you're aware, and I believe that is 6 weeks out, if I heard correctly this morning. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's get into it. And let me just start off by asking you a question. If you received word that one of your closest friends was near death and only had a short time to live, what would you do? Pray for them. Did I hear visit? Okay, yeah, visit. Yeah, I would suggest that some people would drop everything and go. Now, there's an interesting story in Scripture, and that's where we're going to get started here today, because this happened to Jesus. Jesus got this heads up that one of his friends is close to death, and let's see what we can learn from this today. So, if you want to follow along, we're going to be in the Gospel of John, chapter 11. John chapter 11. And let's go ahead and read verses 1 through 6. It says, "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, 'Lord, the one you love is sick.' When he heard this, Jesus said, 'This sickness will not end in death. No, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.' Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days." He stayed where he was 2 more days. Now, why would he do this? He waits 2 days before leaving. And I'm going to suggest to you that Jesus knew he could heal Lazarus, right? But I would suggest that what he had to do is he had to wait to, and this is where my mastery of the English language is going to fail me. So please hear what I'm trying to say and not how rough this comes across. I'm going to suggest to you that Jesus had to wait 2 days to make sure that Lazarus was good and dead. Right? Like there was no doubt about it. And then he was going to go. If we skip ahead to John chapter 11, we can pick up at verse 38 through 44. It says, "Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb." This is Lazarus' tomb. "It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. 'Take away the stone,' he said. 'But Lord,' said Martha, the sister of the dead man, 'by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days.' Then Jesus said, 'Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?' So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, 'Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me.' When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, 'Lazarus, come out!' The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, 'Take off the grave clothes and let him go.'" Just as an aside, I think this is like the source material for like mummy movies, right? I sort of see this as Lazarus comes out of the grave. He's like he's sort of like he's wrapped up, and he sort of looks like a mummy, right? But when Jesus did this, he got everybody's attention. He got everyone's attention. Now, if you just sort of scan ahead in your scripture here, especially if you have a Bible that has headers, you'll see that the next story, it says the plot to kill Jesus. It was at this point that the Sanhedrin was like, we got to do something about this guy. Chapter 12, Jesus is anointed at Bethany. Partway through chapter 12, Jesus comes to Jerusalem as king. This is Palm Sunday. Like this is like the world is taken notice of Jesus, and they're all excited for him. And just a few days later, he would be hung on a cross. He'd be hung on a cross. Now, what Jesus was doing here is a very important leadership principle that I want to share with you today. And it's something called the law of timing. The law of timing. Jess, can you reach in my bag, the front pocket, and I think there's like a green sharp or a dry erase marker. These ones are. Thank you. So the law of timing is what we're going to be looking at today. And the law of timing says when to lead is as important as what to do or where to go. We've spent a lot of time talking about how, these are the things that leaders do. These are the principles that they need to follow. But we cannot overlook the importance of that there is a timing element for this. And this is what Jesus is showing us in this particular story. You see, timing is often the difference between success and failure. Timing is the difference between success. Have you ever been too late to something? Yeah, there's been time. There was a time many years ago. I'm trying to remember. I had a connect. I was supposed to fly from. I think I was supposed to fly from. These are the early days of traveling by plane, and I think I was supposed to go to a meeting in Chicago in O'Hare Airport, right? And I'm just a hillbilly farm kid thinking, what on earth am I going to do in O'Hare Airport in Chicago? Like, I'm going to get gobbled up there. And so I found a flight that went from Erie to Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh to Chicago. And getting out of Erie, the flight was delayed. And whenever I got to Pittsburgh, I missed my flight to Chicago. And the next flight they could get me on wasn't until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the meeting was done at 3, which means that if I would have got on that flight, I would have arrived in Chicago, if it was on time, right as the meeting was ending, and then I would just turn around and come home. I was like, well, what's the point of that? It was the timing was off. Now I know I should have just flown from Pittsburgh to Chicago, but that's not where I was back then. But the law of timing is very challenging, and I say that because to some extent the law is easier to teach than it is to follow. Like I can teach some of these things, but when you're actually leading, this can be a little uneasy. I would suggest that it is possible for you to understand the law, but using it can become very, very difficult, right? Especially as you go through challenging times. I would actually link this to a law that we studied several weeks ago, the law of intuition. The law of intuition is one that's sort of, I shouldn't say, I think the law of intuition is one that is challenging to apply. You can kind of understand it, or it's the law of intuition, just as a reminder, said that leaders look at things with a leadership bias. And you may find yourself in situations where you don't really know how to lead. Like, how do you lead this group of teenagers at Camp for Kids? Like, you may not have the right intuition for that. How do you do that? Both of these laws, I would suggest, are easier for us to grasp in an area of our expertise or of our natural gifting, right? So when you know an environment or a topic, your intuition is going to be up a level. and you may understand the timing of that a little bit different. I wrote an example here in my notes. If you're a musician playing jazz music, right? Now, I'm not a musician. The extent of my musical knowledge is how to turn the radio on, right? I know how to turn it on and turn it up. Like, that's about the extent of it. But if you were to be a jazz musician, especially like improvisational, is that the right word? Improvisational jazz. There's like a few rules that they have, like, and I don't really know what they are, but like so many beats per measure or whatever. But to know when to come in or when to come out, and what's going to sound good and what's not going to sound good. Like, if you're a musician, like, you understand that more intuitively than some guy like me. Like, if I showed up to play in improvisational jazz, I'd probably show up with a horn. And whenever I say that, I mean it's like the horn you would have on your bicycle, just like that. That's about the extent of my musical ability, right? Bring something that makes noise. That would fit the description, but I wouldn't know how to do those particular things. Or consider this: what if you're a cook? What if you're a cook? At one point, my kids were watching these competitive cooking shows, like the bake-offs, and they do all these different things. And what you would find is, they'd be challenged to make something, make an omelet without eggs, right? There's like all sorts of weird stuff. But, when you think about it, a cook is a leader. Right? A cook is somebody who takes people from where they are to a better place. They take people from a place of hunger to a place of not being angry anymore. Right? We've all been there, right? We've all been hungry and angry, and a good cook can take us to a better place, right? A cook may intuitively know that certain ingredients can be substituted or work together to replace something that may not be available. Now, when the pandemic started, just allow me to tell a story about Brendan, if I may. When the pandemic started, one of the things that we did is we empowered Brendan to sort of take more ownership of the kitchen, and she did. She started to do more meal prep and things like that. And there was one day that I don't know, she may have been watching a baking show, because I think she was just adding sugar to whatever she could find. There's been times that she has misread recipes, and she's going through the process. She's learning the lessons. There was a night that we made spaghetti, and she thought, well, if spaghetti's good, it'd be better with a big cup of sugar in it, wouldn't it? So she dumped sugar in the spaghetti sauce, and it wasn't good. It wasn't, right? And that's just the way it was. But a good cook also knows intuitively, or will get to the point where they know, I need to start this first and I need to come up and do this next, right? So that everything comes together at one time, and it it'll turn out just the right way. Or take a baseball coach. A baseball coach intuitively knows, and the law of timing is at work here, on when to put a batter in or when to take a pitcher out. Right? You can tell, if I keep this person going, things aren't going to go our way. There is an understanding of that. You see, in any of these situations, if the timing is off, if the musician has bad timing, the music is going to be garbage. If the cook has bad timing, the meal is going to be garbage. If the baseball coach's timing is off, the results can be disastrous. Right? This is where it is important for us to have an understanding of the law of timing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little grid here. I'm going to draw a grid because we're going to make a 2x2 box, and in this 2x2 box, we're going to have a couple of different options, right? So we're going to have our timing up here, and the decision over here. All right, so we can have a good decision or a bad decision, right? We've all made them. We can have good timing or we can have bad timing, right? That's where we are. So let's say that we, I'll put decision or action. We do, what we decide and what we do, right? So let's say that we decide to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. There's a special word for this, and the word here is disaster. I don't know who's in charge of cruise boats. Is it a captain or an admiral? I don't know. Well, I'm going to say it's captain, all right? There's a captain of the Titanic. He gets word, there's an iceberg. He makes the wrong decision at the wrong time, and it's become part of our everyday language. It was a Titanic mistake, right? It's a disaster, right? Now, the other thing we can do is we can take the wrong action, get this right. We can take the wrong action at the right time. And the wrong action at the right time, we call this a mistake. So there are times that I try to be helpful. There are times that I try to be helpful, but what I'm doing is I'm trying to be helpful at the wrong time, but I'm not doing the right things. I say, you know what? Life would be so much better. I can tell Trace is stressed out right now. I should just go help her. And I go and I'm doing the wrong things around her, and you know what happens? She gets mad at me. And sometimes the kids sometimes it just snowballs. But there's you can tell that the time is right to do something, but if you're not doing the right things, it ends up with a mistake, right? That can happen as well. Now, the other thing we can do is we can be doing the right thing, but we can be doing the right thing at the wrong time, right? We can be doing the right thing at the wrong time, and this builds resistance. People aren't quite ready. Taryn, my youngest, loves to sing, and she loves to sing loud. Now, Brendan likes to sing also. Brendan does not sing with the same heart that Taryn does. So when Taryn sings, it comes from down here. You can tell. Brendan sings, it's a little higher up. And I don't know the technical terms for this, but I have little doubt that Taryn is much more passionate about singing right now than what Brendan is. Last night, I'm in the basement, I'm preparing, and I hear something awful. Like through the floor. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is that? That's Taryn singing. Is there anything wrong with what she's doing? No. That's a good thing that what she's doing. She was doing it at a time that was not convenient for me. And what did it do? It built resistance. So let me just show you how I failed at this part of. I then countered her good decision at a bad time. I countered that with a bad decision at a bad time. So I picked up the phone and I called her. Yeah. I don't know if you call people in your house. And and so I called her and I said, Taryn, sweetheart, will you please make sure all the doors in the house are shut? I'm afraid that there's some animals fighting outside. Wrong action, wrong time. I was hung up on. At which point then I had to, and at that point I felt about yay big, right? I'm like, you are such an idiot. Like, how on earth? So 8:52 p.m. text message. I then had to send to my daughter. I was calling to be funny. Are you okay? She says, yes, I'm fine. It was funny. I'm okay. But I don't believe her. I'm sure I offended her with that. Now, there's people that know it's the right thing to do, but they're just not ready yet. That's where we find resistance. And this is where something that I've come to learn as the forbidden phrase of leadership can come into play, right? The forbidden phrase of leadership is, our people won't do that. Our people won't do that. Oh, can we go do this? Our people won't do this. And the right way of approaching that from a leadership perspective is that we need to prepare them to do this. Right? We could say, you know what we're going to do is, let me make up something. I'm going to try to make up something absurd here. Let's say that we decide that the first week in August, we're not going to have church services here, but instead we're going to go out and we're going to serve the community by washing everybody's car. Right? That could be the right thing to do, but the timing on it may not be right, and we may have a lot of resistance from people in the church. They may say, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Right? They're resisting it because we haven't prepared the community for something like that. Right? If you had a church show up at your front door and they said, we'd like to wash your car, you'd think they're a bunch of weird people, wouldn't you? You would. Right? So there's part of this where there is some preparation to it. I think you'd be hard pressed. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody in our church who would be against Camp for Kids. Right? I think everybody is on board for Camp for Kids. That said, if we said that everybody in the church has to help out at Camp for Kids, there'd be some people who'd be like, whoa, I don't know about that. I don't know that I'm quite ready for that, right? We have to make sure that people are prepared and equipped to know how they can best help with what we're doing, right? That's how the law of timing comes in. Now, when we do the right thing at the right time, this has the label of success, right? When we do the right thing at the right time. That's what Jesus did with Lazarus. He did the right thing at the right time, and we end up with success. Now, good leadership requires many things, and I have a list of 7 things that would go into this. The first thing that I would put on this list is understanding. If we're going to apply the law of timing, we need to have the appropriate understanding of the situation. And I would suggest to you that is being able to see the big picture, to be able to see things a little more globally as far as what is going on. The second thing that we need is some maturity. This is usually what disqualifies me from most types of leadership because I'm largely immature. But the reality is that very seldom are immature people good with timing. All right? Take your kids. They are immature. I don't care how old they are immature. They do not understand timing. I have a quasi third daughter who shows up at our house quite frequently, and at one point, through terrible parenting and supervision, she had ice cream for breakfast. Now, whenever she comes over, she says, you think we might be able to have that ice cream for breakfast again? And I'm like, no, like there's a lack. You see, when you're not mature, you think that ice cream for breakfast is a good thing. When you're not mature, that's how you think. When you're mature, you say, oh, no. Ice cream, that's a late night thing. When you're mature, that's how sophisticated people do it. Sophisticated people know that donuts are the appropriate breakfast food, right? That's what when you're mature, you know that's the donut is a better breakfast than ice cream. We need to keep that straight. Number 3, confidence. confidence. At some point, you have to wait just a bit longer to get the right timing. This is Jesus and Lazarus. He had to wait 2 days. How could he wait 2 days? He could wait 2 days because he had absolute confidence he would pull Lazarus out of the grave. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? There's some confidence with that. Sometimes you have to wait just a little bit, and like this is the drama in the movies, right? It's like just wait. That's where we come from. Number 4, decisiveness. Decisiveness. I think I spelled that. I don't know if I spelled that right. That's a C. Decisiveness. It's the ability to make a decision quickly. Because when timing is so important, you've got to know just the right time to say, now. Now is when we do it. Now is when we go go for it. Number 5, experience. The more experience you have in that situation, it's going to feed into your confidence. It's going to feed into your decisiveness. It's going to improve your timing. The more I would tell you that after playing basketball for as many years as I did, I could start to watch the games and I could tell when a team needed to take time out. Right? You were able to develop a feel and to recognize that this is the timing, this is what they need to do right now to break the momentum or to give their team just a moment. And people who aren't experienced don't know when to do that. Right? It can get away. It can get away from them. We've mentioned it a couple times already. Intuition. Intuition helps with your leaders. I think I spelled that right. Intuition plays a role in your leadership because it helps you with that when you have that understanding. And then the last thing I'll have to help with our leadership is preparation. Preparation. When you're prepared, you're going to be much better to take advantage of the law of timing. There's a quote, I'm wanting to say it's attributed to John Wooden, who said that when opportunity shows up, it is too late to prepare. Or it's something like that. We need to be prepared. Isn't that the Boy Scout motto? Always be prepared, right? You need to be prepared so that you can take advantage of the different leadership opportunities that come your way as they are presented. And if you're not prepared, you're going to miss the opportunity. Quote from Abraham Lincoln, "I will prepare, and someday my time will come." Right? We should always be working on that preparation. So how do we use the law of timing? And I would suggest I have a handful of things here for us to consider. To use the law of timing appropriately, one of the things that we have to do with the people that we lead is we have to define reality to them. We need to help them see, number one, the understanding, the big picture, right? It's arguably the most important thing that anybody can do as a leader, because once you have the situation defined, then things can look much more clear. And I'm going to tell you, this is not easy, and I think it's even less easy today because it seems that you can find a differing opinion on pretty much anything out there, right? There are still some lost souls out there that think that Pepsi is better than Coke, right? Like, I don't know how this is possible. I don't know how it's possible, but some people do, right? You've got to be able to define reality. That's where you got to start. You also then have to identify the issues. What are the hurdles that we're going to have to overcome to be able to do the thing, to be able to get to where we're trying to go? Now, after you have done that, after you've defined reality, after you've been able to identify the challenges that you see, you need to meet with your core group of influencers, right? You're going to have certain people around you that can actually make this work. You need to have their support up front. You need to engage them early. You need to have key people on board with what it is that you're doing, because if your key people aren't on board, you're not going to get very far. You can say, I can make the decision that this is what we're going to do. If I don't have Trace on board with me, you know where that's going to go? Nowhere. I'll hazard a guess that there are many a family that struggle with this in raising their kids. Parent A has one idea, parent B has a different idea, and they're going in different directions and they don't get anywhere. Right? This is how we have to work through that. So you meet with your key influencers, and you have to get buy-in from your key influencers. I'm going to tell you, your key influencers are going to actually make a lot of these things better. They're going to help you see things. They're going to help you consider things that maybe you overlooked or maybe you minimized, maybe you hadn't right-sized. Those are things that's going to happen with that. Now that you have all that stuff shaped out, now you can communicate the vision of where you are going. And the vision of where you're going has to look better than where you're at. Like if you're going to lead people, you're going to be leading people from where they are to a better place. You're not going to get very far if you're going to say, hey, I want to lead you from here to here. Like that's not going to be too inspiring, right? And then you need to model the behavior that you desire to see in others. You need to be that. It's one thing to say. It's one thing for me to say. I think everybody in my house should eat a lot better, and yes, I don't think anybody would probably argue that in their household that there's some way that you can improve, right? But if I don't model that, nobody else is going to get on board with it, right? We studied that in the law of the picture. Many weeks ago. People do what people see. If I'm out here saying this is what we need to do and I'm not doing it, then people aren't going to buy into it. They're not going to buy into it. Lastly, after you've overcome those issues, that's when you can decide to move forward. Now, I will tell you that if a leader repeatedly shows poor judgment, even in little things, people will start to think of that leader as a mistake. If they make repetitive micro mistakes, that's what we're going to see. Now, I mentioned the game of baseball a little while ago, and the baseball is such a beautiful game from the standpoint of how important timing is with it. Right? Baseball, you take a round ball and you throw it fast at somebody else, and they have a bat. And the shape of the bat, if you look at it from the end, it is round, right? You have a round ball going at a round bat, and somehow those things have to hit squarely for the ball to go somewhere, right? That's the reality of it. And I don't know, I guess we're probably about a month away from the All-Star game, the Major League All-Star game, but they'll do a home run derby, right? And people show up and they just throw these easy pitches to try to get people to hit the ball out of the park, right? And you'll hear the crack of the bat and everybody looks, right? And the ball's going and it's flying all over the place, right? But when you think about it, there's some of those balls that'll get hit and they'll go high enough and they'll go long enough, but they won't be in bounds, right? There'll be a foul ball. What's the difference between a foul ball and a home run? It's timing. It's a split second. It's a split second difference between a home run and a foul ball. And that's perhaps a very unimportant illustration, but it is so true with our leadership in our lives. Be that the leadership of our household, our leadership at work, our leadership here at church, our leadership in the community. When we do something matters. That is so key. You see, Jesus understood this completely. He knew that the law of time. He knew the law of timing when he would go to Lazarus. He knew that would make all the difference. I have two extra verses, and this goes outside of the Gospels, so I'm breaking my rule here a little bit. But I ask that you give me just a little bit of leeway here. Let's turn to Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. Galatians 4:4, the Apostle Paul writes, "But when the time set had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship." But you see how verse 4 starts? But when the set time had fully come. The timing was perfect. Romans chapter 5, verse 6. Paul writes, "You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly." At just the right time. When we lead matters just as much as what we do or where we go. That's the law of timing. So take a moment to evaluate the timing of the leadership issues that you are faced with today. What are those leadership issues that you're facing in your personal life? What are those leadership issues that you're facing at church? What are those leadership issues that you're facing at work, right? Look at those things, and you need to evaluate those to say, am I putting off something way too long? Or do I need to let it go a little bit longer, right? Don't miss the opportunity. I have a note here. It just says, my grandfather in knee surgery. So you may or may not know this, but my biological grandfathers both passed before I was born. My grandmother remarried, and so I had one grandpa that I knew growing up, and he was a carpenter. And he would crawl around on the roofs and do all sorts of things, and he messed his knees up greatly with that. And he kept putting it off. He kept putting it off. He kept putting it off. Then years later, he would develop congestive heart failure. And when he developed congestive heart failure, he was no longer a candidate for surgery. And that just aided the deterioration of his life, right? Timing is so important. So there are times when we can be too late, but there's also times when we can be too soon, right? So my encouragement to you today is to evaluate your leadership decisions through the law of timing. And I truly believe that if you do that, you will be glad that you did. With that, I will put the 3 letters on the board, ACT. Based on what we have looked at today, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned today that you can teach to somebody else for your sake and for theirs?